Well, welcome to an emergency broadcast of the Moen After Dark show here on the College Football Mafia Network. I am joined tonight by my friend and colleague, Greg Flugar. How are you doing this evening, Greg?
I'm doing beautiful. Thank you, Moen, for putting this show on. Thank you, Mr. Gygax. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
No
We're joined by
problem.
Daniel Gygax, West Virginia fan. He is our Big 12 representative on the panel, as we're going to talk tonight about the breaking news that came out of Ross Dellinger this evening. The Big 12 is on the verge of a capital investment deal within weeks. So I'm going to pull that tweet up right now just so everybody can see it. This is again Ross Dellinger at Ross Dellinger. Big 12 presidents and ADs today reviewed bids from 3 finalists in the league's pursuit of a capital partner. Sources tell Yahoo Sports. Firms are proposing to infuse millions to schools. RedBird Capital has emerged as the leader. A decision is expected in the coming weeks. This is a capital proposal, not equity. A report last summer about the Big 12's pursuit of a private equity deal with CVC was premature. That deal never reached the final stage because of hangups. CVC is not part of this group of finalists. So we've got 3 bids that they were talking about today. Looks like RedBird Capital is in, no pun intended, the catbird seat, ready to pounce on this and give the Big 12 the capital partner that they've been looking for. Greg, I'm going to go off and tell you how it was explained to me, but
Got it.
I'll let you guys give your opinions first. Just a quick opinion, and then I'll explain how it was explained to me and see if it makes sense to y'all.
Well, I think we should, the decision's going to be made. One of those options is probably they're not going to do it at all, right? There might be a big no, okay? I think we got to, at least entertain the thought that may be that's a possible decision. But when you go this far, they got it at the 5-yard line. They got final bids in, right? And information was passed to Ross Dellinger that RedBird Capital is in the lead. That means that they're socializing this, right? This is at the 5-yard line. They're about to punch this in the end zone. And we'll attack this whole thing tonight, but I just want to say that this is a massive, massive news story. Even if this Big 12 private capital deal starts small, and I'm not saying it's going to be, this is an impactful, changing landscape type of story. Brett Yormark, the agent of change once again, and the impact on the ACC. I think it's just so unknowable. I think this is a fascinating story. That's what I got right now. It's unbelievable.
Okay, Daniel, give your quick opinion on it if you could, sir, and I will jump in.
I have a lot of questions, and I'll even bring up WVU. They partnered up with Learfield, and Learfield works with a ton of different universities to help with licensing. So you saw all those Allstate ads. Those were Learfield was like the middleman on that. All the official airlines, the official dog walker, the official pooper scooper, whatever. All that is handled through Learfield. So it might be one of those deals where, hey, we're going to bring X person in here that knows how to deal with this to get us to this part. And RedBird, they do a part of WWE. They did that Netflix deal that WWE has. They do work with the Yankees. They own part of the Yankees network. They own, I can't remember what soccer team, but they own a soccer team over in Europe. XFL USFL merger. They were the ones that did that. so they know sports, and I was trying to find out if they had any hand in the New Jersey / Brooklyn Nets, and I didn't see anything on there. Was thinking that Yormark might have had a like existing relationship, but I didn't see anything. So I'm just waiting to find out what's next.
Absolutely. And what I was told and the way it was explained to me, this is less of an investment and more of a partnership. RedBird is taking a firm hand. They are going to take a percentage of revenue from intellectual property rights. Part of that, though, is RedBird is actually going to be doing a lot of the legwork. They're going to be going out there and trying to maximize the profit potential of the Big 12 conference as a whole through their IP deals. It's very similar, and I don't want to get the mob involved in it, but to the movie Casino. You see the mob skim a little off the top, but they'll also take a guy in the back and break his hand for you. This is a partnership. They're going to come in there. They're going to take a little money off of you. They're going to infuse a huge amount of cash into the conference. This is going to allow the conference to do some things they might not have been able to do, including maximize revenue sharing. And Ross Dellinger had a tweet on that just shortly. We'll get into that. But this is really a partnership for the Big 12, and this is a long-term thing. They're putting it out there right now. Greg is right. They're socializing it. This is going to get punched through. They're not putting this out there if they don't have at least a good amount of support behind the conference, maybe trying to get a few holdouts to acquiesce and let them go through with this. But this is a partnership. And I'm going to tell you what, guys, I've sung the praises of Brett Yormark before. I will sing it again. I think this is a brilliant maneuver. Albert Einstein says God does not play dice with the universe. I tend to agree with that theory here. This is not a coincidence that this news is leaked right now. Earlier today, Florida State news was linked that case between the Florida State and ACC is likely going to continue in the state of Florida. The Supreme Court said, well, we're not going to hear that. We're not going to let you consolidate all that court case in North Carolina, where it would be easier for them, cheaper for them, and they'd have a better outcome. And then you hear this news. And everybody in the ACC has to be saying to themselves right now, okay, we would love to get a private equity deal, but the Big 12 is going to get out in front of us.
Yeah. And this is what you and I have been hearing about North Carolina, Mo. And I mean, this is this is a bad case scenario for ACC, and I can't imagine, like, they all knew this was coming, and now everybody knows that it's coming, and they would love to have the option that the Big 12 has right now in whether to say yes or no to a deal. Now, maybe the ACC maybe the information that I have received is wrong. Maybe the ACC can work out some minor deal or whatever. But obviously, I think we can all agree that when you have the two top big brand football schools in the conference suing the conference and the conference is suing them back, you're not gonna get a deal that matches what the Big 12's gonna get. So, yeah, it's
now. This is a question I have. The Big 12 grant of rights. There's only, like, by the time that they sign anything with RedBird or whatever, that's 5 years left. That's 2031. So, will any deal have to be extended? Will a grant of rights have to be extended with the Big 12 just for RedBird to say, okay, we've got more than 5 years or we've got 7 years or whatever. 5 years sounds like a long time, but in business sense, they might want to amortize it out further.
You're absolutely right, Daniel. And again, this is a partnership. I was told this is a partnership. This could extend beyond 5 years. I don't know if that requires the GOR to be extended. I think part of the pitch that RedBird is making is that, hey, take us on for this 5 years. and see what we can do for you in the next media deal negotiations. And, here's a great point. And this, I brought this up to the person. They said, that's a really good point. That's why I'm going to say it. Remember the last conference the Big 12 got in front of? The PAC. Remember, they got in front of the PAC. They got their media deal done. They were off and running. The PAC spent 9 months struggling to get any semblance of a deal. The best they could do was with Apple TV, and Oregon and Washington eventually bolted. So
that the deal the Big 12 signed was exactly the one that the Pac-12 turned down.
October 30th, 2022. remember the day because got a few messages and saying, well, boy, the Pac-12 is more screwed than anyone could ever imagine. So I came on live and I said, Ray Yormark just hit a home run. And I said it over and over again. And I got just absolutely buried. And 90% of the people out there thought that Brett Yormark made the deal too quick. He left money on the table, but they didn't realize that the Pac-12's exposure was just, their legs were cut out from under them. So I think everyone should just, I get it. Look, a lot of people are going to say this is not a good deal. A lot of really smart people are going to say when the details come out, this is too risky. We're not going to get, it's not enough high enough ceiling, not enough, coming back. But man, before you go out there on that limb, think of what Brett Yormark has already done. Think about everything he has done and how everyone thought, or a lot of people thought, he had made mistakes, and he hasn't. So, this is a big, big story.
I remember whenever the deal was signed, it was like, okay, 31 million. Okay. That's an amount. And you sit there and you saw what the SEC and Big Ten were making. And you're like, okay, it's about half. But it provided some security.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, they needed it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Let's got to get to some business here, gentlemen, real quick. Our friend Earl Carr has gifted 5 and then 5 more memberships to the College Football Mafia. Thank you, Earl Carr. Those went out to our friend Devil Frog, MBM, Sam 8911SK, Jacobra Cat, Larry the GM, Morris Simmons, Dallas Marquez, Hawkin 2, Buckshot Kid, and Kerry Go Knowles. If y'all are in the chat, make sure you say thanks to Earl Carr for gifting those. We appreciate it, Earl. I don't have my soundboard up. I had to throw this show together real quick here. But tune in tomorrow, and I will play plenty of Sounders and plenty of Cougar Media assets for you, brother. We do appreciate everything you've done for the channel. Okay, so I sent an invite out to Coos. We'll see if Justin can join us here in a bit and get his perspective on this too. But yeah, this is a partnership, and Brett Yormark was very, very smart the way he's done this. He got in front of the Pac-12. Now he's got in front of the ACC. Now you're probably thinking, well, the top schools in the ACC don't care about this because they don't want to get to the Big 12. You got to think about the schools that might have to go to the Big 12. Think about your Louisvilles tonight, guys. Louisville's being told we can't get private equity because Florida State and Clemson are in the courts. Meanwhile, the Big 12 is getting private equity. What's a Big 12?
Not private equity,
private capital investment. We'll call it. They
are getting an investor to come in to help them with their business.
Yeah.
They're getting a capital investment. And
yes.
Think about that. That's how that could be a year. They could have that capital investment for a year. They could outpace the ACC within a year, and the ACC is not going to have, the ability to really pivot on this. This is just a huge blow for the ACC tonight. And I know there's ACC fans in here, and I'm not doing it to take a dump on the ACC. I'm not, but Brett Yormark, I think, is probably one of the smartest men in the room right now. I think he really did a fantastic job.
I think he is the smartest person in the room. I don't, and this is, and I'm saying it from an aspect of this might not work, but it's still, it's kind of, boy, he sees the possible advantage, and he's and he's now. Can I bring up the Yukon thing, Mo? And am I
You-
going to get? Am I going?
No, you can bring that up.
Am I going to get thrown out of the studio?
No. You can bring it up. I don't know if that's true or not. The person who told me earlier did not mention Yukon.
Yeah.
But yes, we had heard that before. Yukon was put out there as a potential expansion candidate due to the New York City market. Again, I don't know if that's true, but you got to think if you're an ACC team right now.
Yeah, the whole Yukon thing. I don't remember if it was September or October, but we at Peek Around the Corner were told that the decision that the Big 12 was going to have on Yukon wasn't going to be no or yes. It was going to be paused until 2025, based upon private equity, private capital, whole situation. A couple of weeks later, it was put out there in public, reported that yes, it's not a no or a yes, it's a pause. And we were told, and we talked about it for months, that Yukon was going to be in one of these bids, one of these, this is what the private capital money, New York City, all those connections, all those brands. You saw it when it was reported. And I think I can say this, when it was reported that Brett Yormark had Verizon Wireless meeting, that was with private capital. Now we know private capital in mind. That would be one of the contacts, brand sponsorship that the private capital would bring in. And we were told that Yukon was going to be in these bids. In other words, Daniel Gygax, West Virginia. This is what the deal looks like. Oh, but this is what the deal looks like if Yukon comes in as the 17th full member, not a basketball member. So,
and I remember the Yukon days of the old Big East. It wasn't 09. I'm trying to remember what year. They actually won the conference because it was a three-way tie at the top. They went to the Fiesta Bowl and just got hammered. I think they went 9-3 that year. So that was the high water mark for Yukon football.
Yeah. So, and none of us, maybe Yukon isn't going to be a part of this at all, right? But I think it's just one of those things that we got to keep our head on a swivel and see if that develops.
Absolutely. And here's another tweet that Ross Dellinger put out tonight. At a function in D.C. tonight, Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman says that she expects some D1 universities to, quote unquote, drop out of participating in RevShare within the year. There will be continual realignment of those that can support competitive RevShare and those that cannot.
That's no shock.
The great split of college athletics is more near than ever. The incremental crawl to the split has accelerated over the years, at first with NIL and now with RevShare. This absolutely plays into what the Big 12 is doing.
Absolutely.
This influx of cash ensures that potentially everybody in the Big 12 can spend maximum on RevShare.
But where it's going to get interesting, I'm going to go on a little bit of RevShare. Your MAC, your Sunbelt, your whatever, they're still going to be around, but they won't have a way to spend money on RevShare.
Or competitive RevShare.
Right.
Or competitive
whatever the number that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're still going to be able to get scholarship athletes.
Exactly.
And we've talked about it before. G5 schools like Ohio State always plays a G5, and in-state school every year it's on a rotation. We do that because it helps ensure that every school within the D1 in the state of Ohio can have a well-funded athletic department. So, but that's interesting that Val said that shortly after this story broke.
Yeah.
Especially with all the rumors earlier this week of the quote-unquote merger between the Big East and the ACC. It definitely seems like there are people out here using the press to put stories out here and socialize.
Yeah.
And I want to take it one step further, and you can throw up the tinfoil hat emotes if you remember in the chat. They're the tinfoil hat emotes up. RedBird Capital is partners in a company called Collegiate Athletic Solutions. And who are they a partner with in that company? A company called Weatherford Capital. And you might ask, well, who's Weatherford Capital? Well, you might remember Drew Weatherford, former quarterback for the Florida State Seminoles, current trustee on the board of trustees for the Florida State Seminoles. They did not mention CAS by name, but there is CAS by association. So you got to wonder if maybe this isn't somebody pushing RedBird to do this, to push another thing for another one. One gear turns the other. It's all connected. It's all a spider web. That's a conspiracy theory. That's pure speculation on my part. Nobody told me anything about that. But I'm just putting it out there. You can look it up. That's a factual statement.
But Florida State's so tied up in court that it's basically wait until all the courts are done. And even then, who's going to be returning phone calls that they made it so political coming out of the state of Florida? They had every politician in Tallahassee throwing stuff at the wall to try to get them out.
You're 100% right, Daniel, but you got to remember, this gives them leverage.
Yes.
The ACC wants nothing more tonight than Florida State and Clemson to get out of the legal system with them. They want them clear. They want them out. They want to be able to negotiate a private equity deal, a private capital investment deal, that they can be on par with the Big 12. While they're in the courts, it's not going to happen, guys. Nobody's going to go and say to the ACC, yeah, we'd love to do business with you. Your two biggest brands are in the court trying to get out right now. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'd love doing business. This is an opportunity for Florida State and Clemson to really leverage the ACC and say, okay, we want a firm figure. We want a firm out date, and then we will get out of the courts for you. Again, I think this is a really, really bad night for the ACC. And I don't say that gloating. That's just my speculation. I think this influx of cash brings stability to the Big 12 football programs, and it causes instability in the ACC football programs. And I'm not talking about the big teams that want to go away. I'm not talking about Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina. I'm talking about the smaller programs in the ACC that might potentially be Big 12 programs someday. In particular, schools like Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, schools that might end up being in the Big 12. Now, they've got to look at it and say, the Big 12 is now going to be, it's not only Florida State and Clemson saying the Big 12 is going to be ahead of us. These schools have to say, shit, now the Big 12 is going to be ahead of us. That's
especially the middle and the bottom of the Big 12. They're going to be, they're going to be able to do the rev share, and there is a lot of, there's a lot of schools are going to struggle with the 20.5 million as we stand right now. I mean, some of the Big 10 schools, Minnesota, it's a struggle, man. And so it's and then Ackerman talking about how D1 schools, a lot more are going to drop out of the opt-out. We've already got historic programs opting out. I know there's not a lot of college hockey fans here, but just for an example, I'm going to try to illustrate this. But North Dakota, incredible hockey program. North Dakota and Minnesota games are they're just nuts. North Dakota fills up their hockey arena, 8,000, 9,000 a game. Tickets are pricey. And a few years ago, North Dakota had to eliminate their women's hockey program, which was a big hockey program, because they just don't have the money. And now, a week ago, North Dakota said we can't opt in on the hockey program. They can't even opt in. They're not even going to do anything with rev share money for their men's hockey program, because that's how strapped the athletic department is, even though the men's hockey program makes money. And then you got North Dakota State, the great football program, who I think the last I heard, the athletic director literally said 99% chance they're not opting in. I know this is FCS stuff, but North Dakota hockey is the top of the, the top 4, top 3 programs in the nation, and they're not opting in. So a lot of these, I look at those Big East basketball programs, Moen, Daniel, I mean, how are they? I mean, what's, this whole merger ACC, is this a desperation ploy for them to figure out how to make sure that they have competitive rev share?
Whenever I first read, what was that? Tuesday, I think, whenever it dropped, I want to say then. First thing I did a head scratch, because I remember the old Big East days with WVU, that you had the 8 basketball schools basically running a football conference. And the more and more I've read into it, and the more that's been said, it looks like the Big East needs cash, and they need heavy cash. I don't know what their media deal is. I know it's
They
nowhere
just signed
close.
a new one.
Yeah, I know they did. It was with NBC and somebody else, if I remember correctly. But it's nowhere close to the numbers that we're talking about with other schools. I know Villanova doesn't have $20 million, and they play FCS football. Yukon might have that money for the $20 million rev share, but they're way dipping into the piggy bank to get it.
Yeah, I can't imagine they do.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will just say this. Tomorrow night on the show, when Wild Ute is here, he does have the numbers for the ACC Big East. And from what I've seen, it's not favorable. It's not a really favorable deal for either conference to undertake. So I'm not sure what the message is there, or if they're just trying to socialize something in there. I want to welcome Coos to the channel. Good evening, Coos.
What's up,
Hey,
gentlemen?
Justin.
How y'all
See,
doing?
little business I got to take care of first here, guys. And then Ryan Willie, the Evil Badger, became a member. Thanks. Good to see you, Ryan. Gifted 5 memberships to the College Football Mafia. Thank you, Ryan. Again, I don't have my soundboard hooked up, guys. This was an impromptu show. Tune in tomorrow night, Ryan. I will give you plenty of Evil Badgers and plenty of Badger sounds. Daniel Gorby, Rob Ellen, the Boro Dog, Noel Ramirez, Scott P. You were all gifted memberships by our good friend, the Evil Badger, Ryan Willie. Make sure you thank him in the chat if you're watching us on demand. Go ahead and thank him in the comments section. It is sure appreciated. We appreciate you too, Ryan. Thank you so much. I can do a little applause here. Wait, that's the Jayhawk squad. That's the applause. I can do some applauses. And then Carrigo knows with a super chat. Not too long ago, the ACC was almost on the same level as the SEC, but the leadership in ACC dropped the ball bigly in the process of padding his pockets on his way out the door. Poor leadership led to the Pac-12's demise too. And I don't know that I necessarily disagree with Kerry's assessment, guys. Do you?
I agree, because they start parting stuff out, and then they sign that Raycom deal, and they get nothing for it. But what I was going to tell you, that Ute has a video up showing the difference between payouts between now and 2031 between the Big 12 and ACC.
Yeah. And that's available on the channel.
This.
It's right on the homepage, I believe. If you click on it, you can see the difference in payouts. All right, Coos. I don't know how far up on this you're caught up. I know this kind of took everybody by surprise tonight. Mm-hmm. You're a West Virginia fan, a diehard fan, according to the Twitter AI. What are your? Yeah, I went to message you earlier, and the Twitter AI popped up and said,
"I got you."
Justin Coos is,
I'll take it.
West Virginia fan. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I actually like it. I know a lot of people don't agree. I know Daniel doesn't agree with me, but I think this is the only chance for teams in the Big 12 to be competitive. I think they're at a point we're at a tipping point here where it's either do something outside the box like private capital, or never win another national championship, never be competitive again. And a team like West Virginia, I don't know. I haven't been able to watch the whole show, so correct me, or pardon me if I'm saying something that's already been said. But you got West Virginia who's sitting here at $130 million in debt already because of past loans they've had to use for facility upgrades. They have one of the lowest budgets in the Power Four. They have $20 million house settlement coming, plus the extra $10 million or whatever it's going to cost for scholarships and the back pay and all this other stuff. Right? They can't afford it. Let's just be real. They can't afford it. So they have to have something. And they've been spending money hand over fist lately. They're hiring more coaches than they've ever had. Their assistant coach pool is probably up in the $6 million range, about double what Neil Brown had. Where's the money? They're paying their defensive coordinator $1.5 million. West Virginia, they've never done that before. Where's the money coming from? Somebody knows something.
Coos, to let you know that Bill Stewart was only making $750 a year. So our current defensive coordinator is making double what our previous coach made.
I think he's either tied for the highest paid or maybe the second highest paid coordinator in the Big 12 now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's something like that.
And that's not something West Virginia normally can afford to do unless they've got money coming from somewhere.
Well, and to be fair, Coos, I know this is a subject we've discussed before. West Virginia operates on a surplus, do they not? The state of West Virginia?
Typically, yes, but they're not now. Their upcoming budget is $400 million in the red.
Yeah, well,
for the next fiscal year, but normally they do, yes.
Yeah, I think the state of West Virginia probably should step in and help fund some of West Virginia. It's supposed to be the premier academic, and I had a great uncle who was a professor there. So
there about 6 months ago, Ren Baker was on the radio show, the Mountaineer radio show, saying, "Hey, we want to do $200-odd million worth of renovations to the stadium." The number's been bantered around a little bit, and they passed around the pot. They got an initial amount of money, and then they were going to go to the legislature, say, "Hey, we need to float blank, blank, blank in bonds." Well, they held back on that, just knowing that they weren't going to get that money from the legislature in bonds.
Well, they got a new governor now. The old governor was a Marshall grad.
True. Yes.
Well, I'm not sure how much he was willing to help West Virginia. No, I mean, he acted like he loved West Virginia, but deep down, did he? At the end of the day,
$25 million baseball stadium in Huntington
from COVID money, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, you have to think that West Virginia would benefit from this revenue influx, this capital influx from RedBird investments. Obviously, like you said, they're spending money. They've got to get to this revenue share threshold. If they can do that, and a ACC school can't, a Wake Forest can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's.
I mean, look at North
benefit.
Carolina. They hired Bill Belichick.
Right.
They got new recruiting budget. They got a general manager. I mean, they're spending money they don't got, and and they want private capital. They want this option, and they're sitting here tonight probably without that option, and West Virginia has that option.
Yeah, and Greg, I mean, there were two people on one of those Super League ideas.
Yeah.
Both Gordon Gee and Bubba Cunningham were both part of that deal, right?
Yeah.
So what's that tell you?
And Gee's been for it, yeah.
Which Gee's leaving, but he's not leaving until July 1st. So
yeah. I got a question for you all, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
What do you guys think? So and I agree with Mo. And at the start of the show, he said this was a planned, coordinated leak and right at the right time. Will there be a response from any ACC leadership, any schools, anything to do with private capital? Are they going to say anything at all? Anything going to be leaked, even if maybe they've had one little meeting with somebody just to say, hey, we're being active? Or is it going to remain silent with Phillips over there and Charlotte?
Well, that's a great question, Greg.
Yeah.
I think they're going to. I think they're going to remain silent.
I don't
Because
think that they can say anything.
Yeah, what are they
Because
going to say?
Yeah. Hey, that we don't have anybody that wants to come in here and cut us a check. I mean,
Yeah.
That's not going to go well.
Florida State and Clemson right now are sitting there like the Cheshire Cat, grinning like the Cheshire Cat, because they have all this leverage now. They're in the courts. Florida State now knows they get to hold the case in Florida for the most part. North Carolina, you're right. They desperately wanted this revenue. They wanted that influx of capital investment. And now they're probably going to be told, well, we got to wait till we get Clemson and Florida State out of the courts. So now they got to go to hat in hand to Clemson and Florida State and say, okay, we need you to get out of the courts. And Clemson and Florida State, all they have to do is say, okay, well, what do you give us? Now,
But
now we're negotiating.
they're also like Florida State. A couple of weeks ago, it was reported that Michael Alford went to the Florida Board of Governors to say, you guys need to let us be able to get into the auxiliary funds of Florida State of our institution, because we need money to help us pay for the maximum rev share. So even if Florida State is like, we're scraping here, we're trying to get to that 20.5 million. So I don't know.
It would surprise me if you see, did you see, I'm sure y'all talked about this, but there was an article that Ross put out about individual schools being interested.
Yes. Yeah. That's the
So
rumors.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see somebody like a North Carolina or Florida State do something on their own without the ACC being on board. Maybe is that something that you all see feasible?
It would be very difficult at a public school having somebody in there to help with deals. Like West Virginia's got Learfield, somebody that's coming in as an equity partner. That gets a little difficult, but yeah, universities are going to have to come up with creative ways to get cash. Michael Jordan can only cut so many checks there at UNC,
right,
and fund his NASCAR team that costing him a couple $1 million a race.
It was publicly reported, I think it was Dellinger, that the Florida State talks with 6th Street shut down because they're in the courts and ACC suing them, and so they had to stop talking. Now maybe something's going on now, or maybe this will kickstart other. Maybe ACC individual schools would take maybe not the most optimum deals, because West Virginia, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Houston, UCF all have the opportunity to go to max rev share. Maybe that's going to make ACC schools more desperate if they can't do a conference-wide deal. Maybe the impact of what the Big 12 is doing here, or trying to do, could go so many different ways.
Yeah, it's massive. I'm all for it, man. They should have done it yesterday, in my opinion, but that's just me. I just think like I said earlier, they're in desperation mode, in my opinion, and you got to do something outside the box. I know Daniel probably disagrees. Moen, do you think it's a good idea?
Oh, I think, Justin, you might have missed it earlier. I think this is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
I think Brett Yormark's the smartest guy in the room on this. Okay. He got in front of the Pac-12, ended up winning that war, ended up getting the 4 corners, ended up getting it's not a great media deal, but he got a media deal. Pac-12 didn't get a media deal. And now he's got in front of the ACC on private capital investment.
Yeah.
He's got in front of them on that.
This is a little different than an equity deal where you have to give up a portion of the conference. This is, hey, we're going to come in here and we're going to help with licensing deals. We're going to help with this. We're going to help with that. We're going to help streamline things. That's something completely different than, hey, we're buying it.
It's basically a loan.
It's not quite a
loan.
It's not a loan, because they're taking money off the top instead of a big lump sum up front.
The way I read it, they were taking it at the end. Not up front.
The way it was explained to me, you're basically borrowing against future earned revenues.
Yes.
But the understanding also with RedBird is RedBird is going to maximize the profits of the Big 12. So it's not
Sure.
like they're just
Yeah.
giving them a loan and coming in and saying, okay, we'll be back in 5 years to collect our loan.
Right. They're
They're
helping
coming in
them.
and
They're
saying,
being
we're going to give
advisors.
you,
Yeah.
yes, we're giving you a loan, but we're also coming on board as a partner of sorts,
Mhm.
and we're going to maximize your revenue for you. Because we're
And-
going to make
and-
sure our
Mhm.
loan gets paid back.
And I was told tonight and throughout the last 6 months, if it was this type of deal, like there's going to be there's going to be in writing some guaranteed business flowing back to the Big 12. It isn't it's not going to be like just the money. It's going to be like, oh, this sponsorship's coming along. This sponsorship's coming along. This signage deal at West Virginia Stadium, that's going to happen. So you're guaranteed you're going to get this money. So you're already going to be able to see at least somewhat. Oh, okay, now there's bad debt and good debt, right? The good debt is the debt that you bring on to increase your value, and you have the ability to pay it back. The bad debt is you get all this debt and you don't increase the value or your how much money you make, and you can't pay back the debt. So I think this private capital deal, although we don't know the details, I think there's going to be some guarantee of business flowing into the Big 12 on day one of the deal. So there is some security.
Yeah. The timing of this to me, and I hate to keep talking about West Virginia, but that's what I know. So, and I think it relates to this story. Just yesterday, Ren Baker wrote a letter to West Virginia fans telling them about talking about the changing landscape, how there was going to be a lot of different revenue streams coming in. There will be updates in the coming weeks or days about new revenue streams. I mean, and then boom, a day later, this hits. I just think these are not coincidences to me.
You're right.
You're right. Yeah.
You're not wrong, Coos. I said it before. God doesn't play dice with the universe. This news story was put out tonight for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think Ren Baker may have known it was coming.
Yes, I'm sure he did know it was coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He knew it was coming. So
because he's a very intelligent guy.
And it was today that. Go ahead.
Weren't all the ADs down in Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
Not just conference commissioners, but all the ADs from the Power Four down in Dallas?
I think so.
For the CFP? Yes.
Yeah.
And the Big 12 presidents and athletic directors, it was today that they saw the final bids. So, and Ren Baker obviously knew that was going to happen, right? So, yeah, it's.
Well, they've seen the proposed final bids. Who knows if maybe this wasn't put out there to maybe light a fire under another company's ass to maybe up the ante. But
it's a good point.
My guess is it probably is RedBird. They're putting it out there. I think, again, we've talked about this before, naming rights for the conference. That's an intellectual property right that they can leverage.
Yep.
That is something
but why third party that out whenever you can go and say, hey, we've got a marketing department already. Make a phone call to Jim's Fish, Chips, and Insurance and get us a deal.
Well, because your marketing department's probably based in Dallas, along with most of the Big 12 stuff. And most of your money is not in Texas is a very rich state. There's lots of money in Texas. But most of the money in terms of media revenue and IP rights are going to flow through New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. And that's where these companies can come in and say, hey, look, great, you can make a deal with Allstate for $25 million for your conference rights. Let us put it out there. We'll make it a $50 million deal, and we'll take 10 of it, and you're still making yourself better off.
And it's sort of like a mafia. I mean, some of these sponsors, some of these
Big 12 mafia, baby.
Yeah. Some of these, they're connected to private capital. And so private capital is going, you help us out here, we're going to help you out over here. You go to Big 12, make some business. So it's.
And if you screw us, we're going to take out your kneecaps.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about networking. It's networking. It really is.
Absolutely. It's all about relationships, man. I'm telling you, business is 90% relationships.
Yes.
This is what's going to happen, Coos. 5 games into the season, after you've made this deal, this private capital deal, Daniel, this is what's going to happen. 5 games into the season. West Virginia is going to be 5-0. You're going to defeat Pittsburgh in the backyard brawl. Nico Marchio is going to win the QB1 slot, and he's going to be like for 15 touchdowns, 0 interceptions after 5 games. He's going to go into Ren Baker and Rich Rod, and he's going to say, you guys got a little bit more money. How about Jim Newsom?
Well, who was it? Oklahoma State. Gundy was talking about that. Don't come into my office asking for more money.
Yeah.
I don't handle it.
Yeah, I don't think Rich Rod's that guy either.
No.
And Kuz, you and I have talked about Yukon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we don't know if Yukon is a part of this or could be a part of this bid. Red Capital being from New York City, but we have heard, you and I have talked about it, how Yukon was probably part of these proposals. West Virginia, whoever the President Gee, I guess still right now, Ren Baker might have that deal in front of them that says this is what each Big 12 institution should expect, an infusion of cash. And this is what you should expect if Yukon is part of the deal. If that might be part of all this. So
potentially.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you West Virginia is going to be in favor of bringing Yukon. And I'm guessing here, but they're just itching for teams in the Eastern time zone. So I'd say they would be all for it as long as it's going to make them more money.
Another super chat from our friend Kerry Go Knowles. The ACC has a right to remain silent. That is all. Welcome to Tally, ACC. He's got the drink emote. He gave us a super chat. Well,
Hey, Kerry, the water's warm in the Big 12, baby. Come on over.
Well, talking about Yukon, that brings up another interesting point. I mean, what if you're adding Yukon to your conference? That's one less slot for an ACC school.
That's true.
That could also make a team like Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, one of these teams that's on, we'll call them a bubble team for lack of a better word. That's got to make them very nervous at this point too.
Well, it depends on how big of an appetite, A, the Big Ten has, B, the SEC has. As Greg has said, they eat first. So whatever the Big 12 picks up will be after those two get first pick. And maybe the Big 12 looks in there and say, okay, we'll pick up Yukon and we'll pick up, let's say, 5 other ones, 22 or maybe 24. That would be 7 more. Because there's 7 schools there, even after a couple schools go that have value. And we're still missing one, and that's Notre Dame. So who knows what they're going to do.
That's a great point, Daniel. And I will bring this up. And again, I'm not trying to insult ACC guys. The ACC is not a smorgasbord or a buffet, guys. There's only a couple entrees in there that the Big Ten and SEC are looking at. So the ACC is still going to exist in some form after this. What that form is, I don't know. Do they backfill with AAC schools? I don't know. But there's going to be a lot of schools that aren't going to the Big Ten or the SEC. A lot more schools not going to the Big Ten and SEC than schools that are. Because I can name 6 maybe. There's 6 maybes in that conference. North Carolina, Virginia, Notre Dame, if we're including Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, Stanford.
That's fair.
I don't think there's homes for the other schools in the Big Ten or the SEC.
No, I don't. You're probably right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. And then you've got teams like Louisville, Syracuse, Georgia Tech that are looking at this going, man, we can either agree to give Florida State and Clemson more money, more of our money.
Which they've already done.
Right?
Somewhat.
I mean, they can't be happy. There's just no way they're happy. You wouldn't think with how everything's shaking out. And now all of a sudden the Big 12 is going to have this influx of cash, and we're sitting here with nothing.
Yeah, it's hard. You're in an arms
Nothing
race.
more than we have, I should say.
You're in an arms race here, and right now the Big 12 is getting machine guns and they're getting handed rocks. And as Roddy Piper would say, you don't throw rocks at a guy holding a machine gun. Yeah, not a good night for the ACC.
He also says, I'm chewing bubble gum, and what did he say?
I'm here to
Kick ass
here to
and
kick
chew
ass and
bubble
chew
gum, and I'm
bubble gum, and I'm all
of
out of bubble gum.
There you
That's
go.
it.
Yes. From the great movie They Live by John Carpenter. I have come
Yep.
here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
I've never even seen the movie, but I've seen that clip
Oh,
about 100 times.
fantastic.
I haven't
movie.
seen it in probably 20 years.
Fantastic movie. Check that out tonight if you guys can find it on streaming. They Live, Roddy Piper. One of the best fight scenes in all of movies. Just a fantastic movie. But that's beside the point. They Live. The Big 12 is definitely they right now. I don't know if the ACC is, especially tonight. Just
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that leaking it out will cause the ACC, Big Ten, and others to ramp their stuff up and try to jump line. But maybe the Big 12 so far down the road, it's not possible at this point.
Not the Big Ten. Big Ten, SEC. They can wait as long as they want to, because their schools will always burn the phones up, trying to call people in Chicago and Birmingham, because they're the Big Two. And then you've got the Big 12, and they're going to have to come up with some way to be creative. And this is their creativity.
So, Daniel, have you changed your opinion on this? Because I know you've been kind of against this.
Well,
for the most part.
let me explain. Private equity, in the big sense of insert PE firm here, buys into this group here, and private equity wants to get out fairly quick.
Right.
They want to turn around. It's like a house flip.
Right.
They want to come in, they want to fix it, they want to leave. Private equity, whenever it comes to public universities, if they bought into the conference, if they bought into a university or something like that, things like that, they go sideways all the time. Private equity does some great things, but for every, let's say they get in 4 companies, 1 will fail. And private equity goes in and buys companies, pennies on the dollar, and just tries to fix them.
Right.
So
this
isn't we're buying in to fix it. This is you've got a good brand. And this is a little different than a private equity company buying in. This is like a strategic partnership. You've got somebody that wants to come in and say, we think that your valuation is this. We can get you to this. We want 10% of anything above this. Yeah. And that's the way that this is kind of set up. That's the way a lot of capitalization programs work.
Right. I thought that's maybe was your thinking, but I wanted to verify that.
So this is a little different.
All right. I want to thank Coos and Daniel for coming in here and giving us the West Virginia position. I appreciate you guys both stopping by on such short notice. I said I wanted to get a Big 12 voice in here. I got 2 in here. You guys did fantastic. Daniel, of course, is a contributor here on the College Football Mafia. You can find his videos, Just the Facts with Dan Gygax. Just look on the video page. Justin, tell them where to find you at.
You can find me at Coos's Corner over, right here on YouTube. You can find me if you're a basketball fan. Hoops from the Hills is another channel I'm doing right now. But Coos's Corner is my main channel. Come check me out over there, and you can find me on X or Twitter, whatever you call it today, at Coos206. I'd love to interact with you.
And Coos is going to be upset at me because I'm going to be at Provo on Saturday.
Yeah, that's on Provo's on my bucket list, man. I got to get there sometime.
Come out in October. I'm going out to the football game too.
I may try to swing it, man. I don't know. It's such a long. I got to fly, so it's plane tickets aren't cheap.
You don't need both kidneys.
Maybe part of this private capital deal is Coos is for there to be money to kick to Big 12 YouTube channels like yourself. So
that's true. we might want to go in there and start filing grants and everything else, guys.
The Big West has a program like that for
Really?
YouTube. Yeah. Well, but you got to think of it this way. It's Big West. So it's like UC Irvine,
Right, I get it.
Riverside, Santa
Yeah.
Barbara. That's where my daughter goes to school at. Davis, but they're leaving. But you get the idea, and they
Yeah.
pay like nothing.
Right.
I think it's like $20 a hour content.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and to be fair, don't listen to Greg. He was the head of 12 Anon. He was getting plenty of big paychecks when that was all going down.
Oh, Karen's
Yeah.
want to put Greg in.
Karen had him on the payroll. He was a kept man.
What were you guys talking about?
I
Big
said,
Love
don't
Karen's
listen
got
to
you on the
Greg
payroll.
Flugar. He was the head of the 12 Anon movement.
Oh,
Big
yeah.
12 Karen was keeping you on the payroll.
Yeah. Okay, I forgot about that. Yes, you're right. You're right.
Thanks for having me on, Mo, and I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for
It was
coming
great-
on, Justin.
Great
I
to
really
catch up with
appreciate
Greg
it.
and Daniel as well. It's always
Hey,
good.
see you, Justin.
Y'all have a good one.
Yep, we'll see you. We'll see you, Daniel. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, no
Appreciate
problem.
you, brother.
Hey, thanks.
All right, we got another super chat here I want to get to real quick, Greg, and then what comes first, full UFO disclosure or Notre Dame bends the juicy knee to a Big Ten thirsty for Irish? I do think I have laughter on here.
I think it's probably Notre Dame bends their juicy knee to the Big Ten thirsty for Irish. That UFO disclosure, I don't think we're going to see that.
All right. Greg, do you have any time or are you done for the night? I don't want to take up too much of your time, sir.
Well, I got, a little bit more. What, you want me to leave or?
No. I'm going to do open lines.
Oh, okay. Do some open lines. And when the little general starts yelling at me, I'll
Okay.
take off.
Well, your reminder that I asked you if you had to leave, so don't
Yes,
get me
I
in
will
guts
remind
with
you.
her.
You won't be in trouble.
All right, the link is now in chat. Go ahead and jump on that link. Just a reminder for you guys. We had a little incident here on Sunday, mowing after dark. So no webcams will be used. You will now be behind the wall of Mo and Tection. Nobody will be showing their willy tonight. So
Oh, jeez.
sorry for all the people on X looking out for that, but that is the case, and we will do these first come, first serve. Get in the queue and get lined up. First one in the chat is Immaculate. How are you doing, Immaculate?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
And I didn't want to show you my face anyways. I look better this way, I think. So
What do you think?
what's up? I think this just looks like a loan. I mean, I know, they got all kinds of fancy terms these days for loans. This kind of loan, that kind of loan, but it's just a loan. And what do you do with the loan? You look to purchase assets that'll help you increase your revenue, so that way you can then turn around and pay off that loan. So, I mean, if this is real and not just, smoke meant to sweat some people out or whatever, I would say, what is the Big 12 looking to buy? I don't think they're just handing money to schools. Schools can get their own loans. They do it all the time. So what do you guys think they're going to buy?
I don't think they're going to buy anything. I said it earlier. This is a partnership.
What do you do with the money then?
That money is going to go to help these schools do rev share. They want to be able to compete at the highest level, and they know that rev share is going to require that. There's going to always be schools that can compete with NIL until House gets passed. Texas Tech is an example of a school that's spending big on NIL. They got money rolling out of them.
But how does that pay back?
It pays back because you're increasing the value of your brand. If you have winning, successful brands on the field, that increases the value of the overall conference.
Okay, but where are you getting the more money? Like, what's the more money coming from? Like, okay, so you've increased the quality of it, but like, what if you're looking at giving them a loan, you're saying, okay, but where's the extra revenue going to come from?
Well, they're going to provide some of that's going to be provided by them. You're basically giving them rights over your intellectual property.
So that would be equity.
Well, it's not necessarily equity.
I know.
You're not saying
what
investing it, but you're saying you're going to work with them to license it. So
I mean, I don't know, I guess maybe, but to me, they're, he came back out and made sure to say, this is not an equity deal. It's just a capital deal. Like, here's capital. What are you going to use it on? And you might be right. Like, some of it might go to help some of their schools do that, but schools are also going to have to do that on their own. They're going to have to do. I mean, you can't count on the conference. I mean, maybe you can get yourself a better deal by, of course, bundling together to get one big one. But at the same time, if the Big 12 is going to expand in the future, they are going to have to help pay some fees, whether it's bringing up from below or, someone coming from maybe the ACC or something. That's expenditures that the conference would have to pay. And so, to me, that's the more obvious thing here.
Well, I certainly think that's a possibility. But I think also, too, a good portion of this is going to go to rev share.
That's kind of like throwing it down a hole, though. I mean, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't really create a visible increase in value. I mean, because the Big Ten and the SEC are doing it too. So who are you gaining on in order to take market share from? I don't know. It's a different opinion, I guess. But
I don't think any of this is taking market share from the Big Ten and the SEC. I mean, it might be taking market share away eventually from the ACC.
That's yeah. Exactly.
But when what I've heard, for months and what I talked about tonight is supposedly because obviously I haven't seen the deal, but supposedly there's business guaranteed to go flow into the Big 12 from whatever bid they decide on, if they decide to pull the trigger. Like, this isn't just like a money infusion alone. This is like the private capital using their contacts, their expertise, their big brands that they work with, sponsorship what they work with, to come in and to spend money on Big 12.
So it's the sponsorships and things.
Like maybe they get a better deal on signage and stuff, in stadium signage and stuff. And and I didn't hear this directly on these possible bids, but for months, one of the things that Brett Yormark, why he wanted to do a conference-wide private capital, it's turning into a private capital deal, is if that private capital can give him a little bit of a longer landing strip for him to gain leverage, or have to have some leverage within the next media rights agreement. Like if these big supposedly private capital, private equity firms have these relationships with giant streaming companies and whatnot, like this RedBird Capital does with Netflix and stuff, that it would give Brett Yormark a partnership, a strategic partnership, somebody that also wants to make money along with the Big 12, not just get their loan, but they keep growing this thing possibly. And that Yormark would be able to, when he goes in the exclusive negotiating window with Fox and ESPN, he will have the ability to say, I'm going to go roll those dice, like Jim Delaney told ESPN, because he's going to have this relationship built. So are you talking about they're going to be purchasing rights from the Big 12 for things like sponsorships and other things in a similar fashion that a network would buy television rights? I don't know. I took it as private capital has relationship with Verizon Wireless.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they do a bunch of business together. And if the Big 12 and this private capital get a partnership then Verizon Wireless comes in and they can make some pretty good deals with the Big 12 schools because maybe Verizon Wireless is paying off the private capital for something else that they've done, kind of like a illegal Ponzi scheme or something. This is what NBA franchises have done, but it's more private equity because they're buying like 10, 15, 20% of the NBA franchise. But this is what NBA franchises have done. And these guys come in with all these connections, these private equity firms, and supposedly they bring up the value of these NBA franchises. But that's a whole different world. But
I mean, that's why I brought up what I brought up, because it sounds pretty much exactly like what the Big Ten does with Fox, where they sell to Fox and then Fox sells to NBC and CBS. But Fox then, it's not equity, but they own those rights, so to speak. And so it kind of sounds like what you're saying is they're going to come in and buy the rights to certain things and for a certain amount of money. And then they're going to turn around with all of their contacts and sell that and probably do better at it than what the Big 12 could themselves. Is that kind of what you mean?
Possibly, yeah, if it works. There's there's the old other story of this. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's a complete.
All right, well, I'm sure you probably got a line of other folks that want to jump on here, but I just wanted to stir the pot a little bit and be like, Big 12 is getting ready to buy something. But no, I think what you're saying also makes a lot of sense, and that's probably what they do is they're buying rights to turn around and sell.
Appreciate you stopping by, Immaculate. If you guys didn't catch it last night, he did a show with Nathan, the Sit Down. Fantastic show. I highly recommend. If you did not get to catch that live, you go back and watch that. He did a fantastic job, Immaculate.
Nathan throwing in his bid to be a commissioner of all college sports, it looks like.
Yes, with the Super League. I don't know how private capital investment factors into Super League, though.
I don't know. He'll have to come up with that part next.
We'll leave that to him.
Sounds good, guys. Good talking
Thanks,
to you.
Immaculate.
Thanks, Hawkeye.
I got a couple super chats here. We got Vox Quindaro with a $99.99 super chat. I don't have the soundboard up, Vox, but I'll give you some Jayhawks, and I don't have any Jayhawk media assets on Mowing After Dark, so I'll make it rain for you and give you a little more cash. Thank you, sir. Rock Chalk, and thanks, fellers. Moan and Greg, even Wild Ute and Immaculate too. Great topic. Thanks for stopping by, Vox Quindaro. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. And then we got one more here from our friend Carrigo Knowles, and then we'll get up to CFB Plus. Carrigo Knowles, I thought Greg has been calling Immaculate Hot Guy all this time, when in fact he's been saying Hawkeye. True story.
Minnesota accent, baby.
Immaculate is a good-looking dude. Good-looking dude. All right, CFB Plus, you are on the line. What are your thoughts here?
Hello. A lot of thoughts. So I've been busy all day, so I apologize if I repeat anything. But my first question is this so Ross Dellinger calls it capital partner. Now, is this just another word for essentially private equity, and they're just using it because it is more palatable to ADs and especially the fans?
No. The way it was explained to me, no. It is a
Okay.
capital investment. They are going to give capital. They are going to be doing the IP rights for the Big 12 conference. I don't know how much the terms are. I know Ross Dellinger mentioned in his thing it would be like a 10% to 15% interest rate. I don't know how true that is, but from what I was told, it was a partnership. And one of the things that the Big 12 really likes about this, and Brett Yormark likes about this, is it gives you a partner. And one of the nice things is having a partner means you have somebody who's vested in making sure you are successful. Part of the problem that sunk the Pac-12 was they started their own football network with no partners. And they said, we'll reap all the rewards, but they also took all the risk on that. And that risk ultimately didn't pay off for them.
And they didn't have the expertise.
Yeah, they didn't have the expertise. And meanwhile, the Big Ten partnered with Fox. and the SEC partnered with ESPN. So there's
That's a great. I'm sorry, Mo, and that's a great example because the Pac-12 didn't have. They weren't able to grease the skids to get distribution. They had no partner, right? And that's what supposedly this private capital will bring in. It will grease the skids, bring partnership expertise in. Sorry, Mo, and it's a great example. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what the Big 12 wants. They want a partner who is invested in the success of the Big 12. They want a partner who's going to help maximize their profits, get that revenue up as high as possible, and look 5-6 years down the road when that media deal's up, having that partner could be a huge asset, especially if that partner's based out of New York. These media deals are getting signed in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, the 3 largest media markets. So having a point man on the ground there certainly won't hurt things.
No, I fully agree. I think my thought process is the Big 12 kind of has to do this, and we're kind of at a critical point where we're looking at the old guard versus the new guard, and I think if Brett Yormark is smart, he can hedge his bet, um, and kind of play on both. I think the Big 12 is in a position where they have to do this. I know it's a risk, I know it's a gamble, but if they don't do this, they will get left behind. If they do this, they may not get left behind, but they also might get left behind. Um, I think what's going to be more important about this, I mean, we'll see the details later. I think it's not just about the money. I agree with what you're saying. It is about the connections and the partners. And I think Greg has talked about this a little bit, or he's alluded to this, is that specifically with the WWE, the WWE got a strategic partner, and um, with that strategic partner, they were able to get a considerable amount of sponsorships and sponsorship revenue. And so I think that going with a capital partner, strategic partner, whatever you want to call it, opens the door for the Big 12 to get partnerships with various sorts of brands through the connection of, let's just say, RedBird, because that was thrown out tonight, or whoever they sign with. And so that right there is going to, one, increase the exposure of the Big 12 because of marketing, simply, and then it's going to increase revenue, and that revenue can start paying back the loan that they took from RedBird. And then secondly, Greg also has alluded to this, is they might be able to develop relationships with some big streaming platforms, such as Amazon and Netflix. And those partners or those platforms would like to tap into live sports. So if you're the Big 12, you can kind of play this delicate game where if you start developing those relationships with Amazon and Netflix, who are wanting to get into live sports and who have the resources to potentially pay top dollar to get into pretty high tier live sports, especially in football. They're not the Big Ten, they're not the SEC, but they're not the MAC. They're not Conference USA. So the next time the media rights roll around, the Big 12 can take that relationship that they've built and they can leverage that against Fox and ESPN, and they can say, we have these other shooters, and you're going to have to pay us more money that is more competitive with the Big Ten and the SEC, or we're going to go with the other with streaming, and they're going to allow a pretty major competitor to enter that market, because right now it's pretty much Fox and ESPN who they don't have a monopoly, but they kind of have a monopoly on the sport. And the TV market's already heading towards streaming. And so if the Big 12 goes with Netflix or Amazon, they're allowing a pretty big and pretty dangerous competitor into that market if you are Fox and ESPN. So there's kind of a burden for Fox and ESPN to really pay the Big 12 in order to keep that inventory and keep it away from Netflix. So by doing that, you automatically elevate the value of the Big 12, and they're going to treat them well because it's an investment. They're not going to pay $100 million to the Big 12, $100 million a year to every team in the Big 12, and then just like not care about them. And if they don't do that, that's just hypothetical. I'm throwing out numbers. But if they don't do that, and the Big 12 does go with, let's just say Amazon or Netflix, then suddenly the Big 12 is the darling child of a major streaming corporation who's going to advertise the hell out of them because they're going to want to make their money back, and they're going to want to bring more viewers to their platform. So I think if Brett Yormark plays his cards right and he goes with a strategic partner, he can kind of hedge his bet against the new guard being streaming and the old guard versus Fox and ESPN and linear cable. And this is something the Pac-12 couldn't have done last go around because they didn't have those connections with some of the major streaming platforms. And I don't think the critical mass was there yet to kind of go to a streaming site. But now we've seen, Monday nights on Amazon, Netflix had the Mike Tyson fight that had 60 million viewers, something like that. So I think the risk for the Big 12 is more than worth it, considering in some ways they have nothing to lose. Because if this doesn't work out, it's not like, they were going to be, they're kind of, they're already starting behind. So if this doesn't work out, it's not like they're suddenly losing their spot at the seat of the table. But if this does work out, they're ensuring a spot at the seat of the table. And this also sends a message to maybe some ACC schools who are a little concerned. Now, I don't think this is the primary, but it also is kind of a bonus or side bonus of saying, to potential ACC schools that are looking kind of elsewhere, that they might have a home and a sustainable and profitable home in the Big 12. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I tend to agree with you. Again, they're looking for a partner. Partner's going to help them. Going to help them in a media rights deal. Going to help them in intellectual property rights deal. This partner is going to absolutely do everything they can to maximize the profits for the Big 12. And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. It was explained to me like the plot from Casino. The mafia comes in, they skim a little money off the top of the casino still makes money. And if somebody gets out of hand, they have the mafia to take them in a room and break their hand with a hammer.
But I think I think the mafia wants in New York City. I mean, we're talking Netflix, we're talking streaming company, we're talking all this possibility down the road, and I keep thinking of Yukon because because that's what we've been told for 6 months. It's almost it's. I'm not promising anybody a rose garden here, but I think there may be a Yukon story attached to all this.
And I agree, because it not only gets you in New York, but it's close enough to Boston too. So you can kind of really tap into that metroplex up in the Northeast.
No.
Not only that, you're in Connecticut, you're right on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Everybody in New York usually lives in Connecticut and they go in the morning on the train and then come back on the train and drive their car away from the station. Lots of media executives live in Connecticut. ESPN is based in Bristol, Connecticut. Boston, the Gold Coast of Connecticut, New York City, Long Island. Lots of markets.
And I'm reading some comments on this, and let's just we don't know a lot, right? We don't know a lot about this deal. None of the details. Yormark hasn't even made a decision yet, right? Supposedly, Red Capital seems to be the leader. But, there are ACC schools, more than a couple of them, that are interested in this, in private capital. Okay? They are. They've been going to the meetings, right? They've been going to the meetings. The Big 12 schools have been going, some of them. I can now probably say some of this. Baylor has been big pro. I mean, there's been Big 12 schools, ACC schools, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Duke, West Virginia. I'm sorry, West Virginia is Big 12, but you know what I'm saying. There's ACC schools that are like North Carolina. They want this. They want the option of this. So I'm seeing comments in the comments section and on X, ACC are like kind of mocking the Big 12 because they have this option. Well, I can tell you, man, there's a lot of ACC leadership, very smart people who want this option as well. So what does that tell you? There are other people that are willing to take this risk. Now, whether they're going to get the opportunity or not, I don't know. But maybe we'll hear something in the next week or month. I don't know. But it ain't just like the Big 12 schools are like the only ones. I can tell you, we know that the AAC and the Mountain West Conference are working some stuff. The stories are numerous out there. So it ain't like the Big 12 or is a bunch of idiots. They're the only ones who want to do it. There are other schools. There's a lot of people out there that want to take that big money that's sitting on the sidelines. Now, Brett Yormark has worked it because he's been able to work it. He's got 10 connections. He's got the political IOUs in the Big 12. They're at the 5-yard line, and they're about to punch it in. And the last time, and Moen said it at the beginning of the show, the last time Brett Yormark was mocked by others after he made a big deal on October 30th, 2022, when he signed, sealed, and delivered the media deal with Fox and ESPN, they mocked him. They thought that he left money on the table. They thought the Pac-12 was going to go over the top, way over the top on Yormark and make him look like an idiot. Quite the reverse happened, right? So I'm just telling you, I ain't saying, but I'm saying. I think the real story, because I think Moen's got this all wrapped up in a nice little bow. I think the story is going to quickly go to what the hell is going on in ACC country. Can they get it together? Can they get some sort of deal? Can they scrap something, even with 2 schools being sued and them suing the ACC? Or are they going to work out a court? Are they going to work out some big negotiation? This story is going to quickly flip to the ACC because they fear that this deal with the Big 12 and private capital might actually just work. Moen, I got to go. I just wanted to end it with that.
I appreciate you, Greg.
I want to thank you, Moen, for all your work tonight. CBS Plus, I'm sorry I cut in on you. I apologize. Everybody else, thanks for coming on in. Comment section, College Football Mafia, thanks for letting me come on in. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. You can find Greg on College Football's Peak Around the Corner. Follow him on Twitter at Flug Empire. Good friend of the show. We appreciate you coming on, Greg. Thank you so much, sir.
Moen, you are the greatest, no matter what I say about you.
All right, sir. Likewise to you. We will see you in October. All right. Do you have anything else you want to add, CFB Plus?
The last 2 things I'll say before I head out is, one, I think this is more about partnerships and less about the immediate money being invested in the Big 12. I think the money is important. I think that's going to help tremendously with investing into the programs and elevating the brand. But I think this is more about partnerships. Now, the second thing I would like to just kind of float out there, and I don't know if this has been mentioned before or not, but I know a few weeks ago there was some talk of Kansas going or potentially being a target for the SEC. And so they could have been a holdup for any sort of deal like this because naturally, someone who's investing presumably a ton of money into the Big 12 is going to want that conference to stick together for a decent amount of time, and that time might be more than the current media rights deal. and that agreement that would bind everyone might be more difficult to get out of than the grant of rights. So if the Big 12 does end up going with this, and I think this report is kind of indicative of that. If this was still on the fence, I don't think Ross Dellinger would have dropped this. But that, I think this is more indicative that Kansas is staying in the Big 12, which is a huge, huge part of all of this, and ultimately determines whether the Big 12 can even compete to be at the seat of, to have a seat at the table. So that's I'm gonna leave it with that.
All right.
And thanks
well,
for having me on the show.
Yeah, appreciate you jumping on CFB Plus. Follow CFB Plus on Twitter.
And
does some-
Instagram. I'm mostly on
Instagram.
Instagram.
Yep. Does some great
I'm one of the
graphics.
young guys.
We appreciate you, CFB Plus. All right, guys. I think we're going to close it down for the night. I know we didn't get to a lot of comments. I apologize, guys. Packed show. We will be on the air tomorrow night starting at 7 with the Big Freakin' Friday show. We will have more on this developing story. We'll also have those statistics and financials from the Big East ACC that Wild Ute's going to lead us through that I think are going to be pretty interesting. I will also get a bunch of sounders and a bunch of media assets played for y'all guys who donated tonight because I didn't have time to set up the soundboard. I want to thank especially Earl Carr, Ryan Willie, Kerry Go Knowles, Jacobra Cat, and Vox Quindaro for that very generous super chat. Thank you to everybody who donated tonight. You guys are much appreciated. Again, I will applaud you. Tomorrow night, I will play some sounders. Meanwhile, if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like. If you're not a subscriber of the channel, I suggest giving us a subscription too. Would be much appreciated. If you're watching us over on X/Twitter, feel free to jump over to the YouTube page and give us a subscribe. Helps us out tremendously, and we're producing new shows and new shorts pretty much every single day. So definitely something I think you guys should check out. Again, I want to thank Greg for coming on the show tonight. Most importantly, he convinced me to do a show tonight, so he was very helpful in joining me. I want to thank Daniel Gygax, who you can find right here on the channel, Just the Facts with Daniel Gygax, and Justin Coos, who came on from Coos' Corner. You can follow him at Coos' Corner, at Coos206 on Twitter. For myself and everybody who joined us tonight and all the fans, I want to say thank you. Have a good evening. We will see you on Friday.